All right, we gotta have a conversation here about how we need to stop listening to what they say and we need to start watching what they do. That goes for every politician. That is not just a Republican thing. They all, on some level, seem to say one thing and do another. I've seen Democratic politicians do it. I've seen Republican politicians do it. I've seen independent politicians do it. They tell you one thing, they do another. And so the old adage, actions speak louder than words, usually comes into play when you're dealing with any politician. But while they all do it, one makes an art form of it. One takes it to an extreme. And that one just so happens to be the Republican nominee for president in 2024. And that's why we're going to talk about it. He is constantly telling you one thing, but doing another. Yet people keep listening to what he says without paying attention to what he does. Right now is a prime example. Right now we are in the throes of the 2024 presidential election. I think we are 34 or 35 days as of right now out from the election. And right now, Donald Trump is telling you that he's a champion for women. He is going to protect women's rights. Women's rights are going to be sacred under a second Donald Trump administration. But those words go in direct opposition to what the actions he took part in during his first presidential term. He appointed Supreme Court justices that wound up making the difference in stripping away federal protections for women's bodily autonomy rights. So how can you possibly, as a Trump supporter, say that you believe Donald Trump is going to be a champion for women's rights when he has shown you through his actions that he is anything but? How can you continue to listen to him say, for example, make America great again, when for 4 years as president, and I would argue, if we just could for a moment, it goes way deeper than 4 years of a presidency with Donald Trump. We've seen this kind of behavior for 60 years out of Donald Trump, that he doesn't give a fuck about America. He doesn't give a fuck about Americans. He gives a fuck about himself. Hell, he doesn't even give a fuck about his own family members. He just cares about himself and his bank account. But from a strictly political standpoint, how can you continue to listen to him say, make America great again, while watching him do things like start unnecessary trade wars with China, costing God knows how many farmers their farms? If you truly wanted to make America great again, you wouldn't do that to the American farmer. You would figure out a way to work with China so that American agricultural exports continue to flow. Imports of the things that Americans wanted to buy from China continue to come into the country, and not disrupt that for the sake of trying to make some type of political point. If you truly wanted to make America great again, you wouldn't, for example, use American military soldiers as pawns and send them to the southern border to fight a non-existent migrant caravan weeks before a midterm election, which is exactly what you did in 2018. That's not making America great again. That's wasting American taxpayer dollars and using American soldiers as pieces in a game that you're playing. That does everything but make America great again. If you truly wanted to make America great again, you would not take the word of a former KGB agent and current dictator of the second largest superpower in the world over the word of your own intelligence agencies when it comes to the meddling in our elections by foreign adversaries. Watch what he does. Stop listening to what he says. The other day, or what was it, yesterday, we had the presidential debate, or the vice presidential debate. J.D. Vance gave you a couple more, he gave you many more, but I'm going to pull a couple out, a couple more examples of watch what they do, not what they say. Right? He said that if reelected, Donald Trump was going to return American manufacturing from China. He was going to make sure that those manufacturing jobs and those manufacturing plants came back into the United States of America from China. Well, A, why the hell didn't he do it the first time around? He was in office for 4 years. He did no such thing. And B, why doesn't he lead by example by beginning to have his products, his suits, his ties, Ivanka's shoes, made here in America instead of in China? Why does his daughter hold a dozen patents in China? Why doesn't she hold those patents here? Why isn't she making her products here? Why isn't he making his products here? If you want to tell me that if you're elected president, you are going to bring manufacturing jobs back from China while you have products being made in China, I'm sorry, I'm going to call bullshit. Be the change you want. So there was one example that J.D. Vance gave in that vice presidential debate as to why he should not be believed and we should be watching what they do rather than listening to what they say. Because that sounds great. If reelected, Donald Trump is going to return manufacturing from China to the United States of America. Except he didn't do that. Another example that he gave is when he said, and I got to be honest with you, I still can't believe J.D. Vance said this in a live televised vice presidential debate. Hang on one second. If you're not smoking while listening to this, if you're not smoking while watching this, I totally understand. But believe me when I tell you, it helps. Another example is when J.D. Vance said during the vice presidential debate that Donald Trump will protect Obamacare. That's right. He said they were going to protect Obamacare. Donald Trump, a man who made it his sole mission to tank Obamacare. Repeal, replace. Remember that bullshit? Do you remember how absolutely livid Donald Trump was at McCain when McCain gave the final no vote in the middle of the night? That dramatic moment that made everybody on the floor of the Senate go. He still bitches about that. He still complains that John McCain didn't do what he wanted John McCain to do, which was to overturn Obamacare. Now, with 35 days to go till the election, he's trying to sell you on the notion that he's going to protect Obamacare. Watch what he does and stop listening to what he says. It's real easy to sell simple people on an idea. It's real easy. And I'm not trying to be rude when I say that. There are people in this world that are simple people. They don't want too much out of life. They don't want too much drama out of life. They don't need too much money to live. And they don't know too much. They're simple folks. And it's real easy to convince those simple folks that you're going to do something that you've already shown you will never do, and in fact, do the opposite of. Because these are the people who scream and yell and berate you about making sure you do your own research rather than just listening to the woke leftist media. But then they don't bother to do an ounce of their own research, because if they did, they would learn rapidly that all of the promises that are being shoveled into their heads by their candidate are bullshit lies. Because he's already shown you he's already done or has been willing to do the exact opposite of what he says. Stop listening to what he says and start watching what he does.